Hello, you're watching the business headlines on HW News with me, Ali Azhar. With the budget just around the corner and everyone focusing on GDP growth rate, which at 6.8% for financial year 2019 was the slowest in 5 years, an even more disturbing macroeconomic indicator has made its way into the mix. According to data collected by the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, or the CMI, investments in new projects hit a 15-year low in the quarter ending June 2019. New projects worth 43,400 crore rupees were announced by Indian companies across both private and public sectors in the June 2019 quarter, which is roughly 81% lower than what was announced in the March 2019 quarter, which stood at 2,28,000 crore rupees. The chart depicts the quarter-wise amounts of investments in new projects, and what can be observed is that not only is the amount of investment or new project announcements the lowest in the June quarter, but it is also the only quarter among all 9 where the amount of fresh investments have not even surpassed the 1 trillion rupee mark. In fact, it is less than half of 1 trillion. While these figures released by the CMI are only provisional and could be subject to revision, it paints a bleak picture of what was promised to us by the government and what the ground realities are. This sharp decrease in investment could be partly on account of uncertainties due to general elections in the previous quarter and transition to the new regime. This investment slump is broad-based, engulfing all sectors such as construction and real estate, services, power generation, metals and minings, and manufacture. Investment in services and manufacturing sectors were the worst hit, falling by 94% and 75% respectively compared with the previous March quarter. Another way of looking at the same problem would be from the angle of projects stalled. And this number is the highest since the CMI began compiling data way back in 1995. Weighing in at an astronomical and equally disturbing figure of 13 trillion rupees, the June 2019 quarter was the culprit of the highest ever stalled project. According to the data, private sector projects being stalled are at unprecedented rates and have reached an all-time high. The chart depicts the overall implementation of projects stalled, and what can be observed is that since the June 2018 quarter, projects stalled have been progressively increasing and finally peaked out in the June 2019 quarter. The primary reason is the lack of funds because of the recent liquidity crunch and the fact that banks, being undercapitalized and plagued by NPAs, are skeptical to lend money to finance projects. Other reason includes delays in land acquisitions, shortage of fuel and raw materials, lackluster investment sentiment, and even a slowdown in global economic activity has affected our investment appetite. Let's now hear what our business and finance editor, Mr. Akhilesh Bhargav, who has been a practicing chartered accountant for close to 3 decades. Let's see what he makes of the situation. Over to you.
One of the biggest problems that faces the Indian economy today is investments, fresh investments in the economy are languishing. And that primarily has to do with investment from the private sector not forthcoming. If you go by the figures, the average investments that took place in India during the 5-year period up to 2011 was about 21.5 lakh crores a year. The figure has fallen down to about 9 lakh crores a year. That is a steep fall in investments in India. And the reasons are quite a bit. While the investments during that period to 2011 were a little exaggerated because bank money was very easy to come by and enterprises recklessly borrowed and invested. But despite that, if you look at the present figure, it is at a very low figure, and according to us, it is at a 15-year low. The reasons are many. The first one, according to us, is the balance sheets of the lender as well as the borrower are debt loaded. There is no good borrower today who's capable of borrowing, and that's because of 2 reasons. Corporates have been incurring losses, or rather corporate profits have fallen sharply. That reduces the ability of a company to borrow. It also reduces the confidence of the borrower to borrow. So the first is the twin balance sheet problem. The second is the overall confidence of the investor as well as the consumer in the economy has been receding, and that dissuades any fresh investments into a new project because the investor does not find his money to be safe or does not think that his money is going to be profitably invested. Linked with the problem of the banks is the NPA crisis. The NPA crisis remains unresolved. To top it, many banks are still sick, they are under PCA. Their entire capacity to lend is constrained. If lending does not take place, investment suffers. Along with this problem of lending is the fact that interest rates have been very high. If corporate profits are receding and interest rates are high, why will a corporate or any entity borrow in order to invest in a new project? This has got further aggravated by the NBFC crisis. If banks were in a problem and were unable to lend, the entities went to NBFCs to borrow, which are again in a problem, they are also not able to lend. The next one, the reason why it has been falling is what I said earlier. Corporate profits have been receding. Why should a corporate invest money in a new project? Along with this came the situation of a high compliance cost. Regulations have shot up in the last few years. Compliance costs have shot up. A lot of enterprises, especially in the small sector, are reeling under unnecessary, unwanted costs of compliance, and they had better not invest rather than get into these kind of compliance costs, which anyway are not giving them an adequate return. Corporate taxes remain among the highest in the world, and that again is a factor that dissuades investments. And the most important, with the onset of GST, the amount of working capital that is being blocked in business has gone up. While the working capital requirements have gone up, the banks are unwilling to lend. NBFCs are anyway stressed out now. How do the businesses get money for their working capital for conducting business? So there are a lot of reasons which together are impacting the very mood of the investor to invest, to commit fresh investments in the economy. And that is also one of the reasons why the GDP growth in India has been slowing down consistently quarter after quarter. These very factors that I enumerated are the ones that will need to be sorted out by the finance minister in the budget that is coming or by way of reforms that should keep coming month after month. Because if that doesn't happen, investments will languish. No investor will be willing to commit his scarce resources in a situation where he thinks he's not getting an adequate return on investment or his investment is not safe.
Apart from the lackluster investment data, GDP growth rate is also fast becoming a worry. GDP growth declined to 5.8% in the fourth quarter of FY 2019, which drove down the full year GDP growth rate to 6.8%, the lowest since financial year 2014. The Reserve Bank cut interest rates for a third time in a row last month to aid growth rates. Now, however, the economy not only needs RBI help but also budgetary support to boost investor sentiment and get the economy back on track. And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has a tough job on her hands if she wants to assist Prime Minister Narendra Modi in reinforcing his promise that India will be a $5 trillion economy by 2024. The government is reported to be working on a 74,000 crore rupee bailout package for state-run telecom companies BSNL and MTNL, according to the Times of India. BSNL is India's biggest loss-making public sector unit, or PSU, with losses estimated at 13,804 crore rupees in FY19, while MTNL is the country's third largest loss-making PSU, racking up a loss of 3,398 crores. Separating these two siblings of destruction is the national carrier Air India, which comes in at number 2 with a loss of 7,365 crore rupees in FY 2019. If this bailout package of 74,000 crores goes through, the two telecom PSUs would be the biggest drain on the government expenses, overtaking none other than Air India, which has received budgetary support of 30,520 crore rupees since 2012. The bailout plan was considered the best option for the sickly PSUs, as closing them down is estimated to cost approximately 1.2 lakh crores or 1.2 trillion rupees. And considering that the telecom sector is undergoing a lot of stress, disinvestment of the two companies would not find many takers. The breakup of the bailout package will look something like this. The biggest reason BSNL and MTNL are in losses is because of unnecessary employee costs it incurs. Therefore, it comes as no surprise that a major portion of its bailout package will be used to satisfy costs related to terminate redundant employees. Of the proposed bailout, 10,993 crores and 29,182 crores will be used to provide for early retirement benefits and voluntary retirement scheme, that's VRS, which are both employee related costs. 20,410 crore rupees will be allotted for rollout of 4G spectrum, and the remaining 13,202 crore rupees will be earmarked for capital expenditure. BSNL and MTNL have been struggling to compete with private players in the sector due to high costs, poor management, and unnecessary government intervention. While the telecom industry is fast migrating to 4G and even preparing for 5G, the two PSUs are yet to roll out 4G services. Average revenue per user or ARPU of these two telcos stand at 38 rupees compared to 70 rupees for private players. Thank you for watching HW News. This is me signing off. Have a great day.